It's time to dad.
Hey guys, welcome back to Time to Dad. Appreciate you guys joining us. This is a pretty special episode for us tonight. I know on some previous episodes we've been talking about trying to get some subject matter experts on here for you guys, so you're not just listening to us jibber jabber the whole episode. So tonight we are super happy to have Brandy Amodio with us, who's a licensed clinical social worker. Joe was nice enough to reach out to her and see if she'd come on and talk a little bit with you guys. So without further ado, Brandy, if you kind of want to introduce yourself and give everyone a little background.
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me. I'm happy to be here and helping you guys out a bit. Just spreading awareness about the importance of mental health and all the different things that come along with that. So, just a little about myself professionally. I graduated from NYU in 2008 with my master's in social work, and I've had several various jobs through the years. All different kinds of things in the field of social work where doing therapy as a in private practice was always my end goal. So that's a goal that I finally achieved in 2019, and I've been doing that as my only job ever since.
Yes.
It's definitely something I enjoy doing. I guess it's my passion. I started doing private practice part time in 2015, and that at that point in time in 2015 was when I started focusing on my specialty, which is working with um, people impacted by a loved one's addiction. So whether it's alcohol or substances, and that was something that was actually personal to me because I am somebody who was that person that I specialize in. My first husband struggled with drug addiction, and unfortunately in 2015 he lost his battle with substance use and he took his life. So that was a very challenging part of my life, and going through that with him through the addiction piece, I didn't know that there was help out there, and I didn't know that this was something I could talk to people about. So I spent years dealing with this by myself. And once he passed away, it was kind of like an awakening to me that there really should have been help. And I realized that there was help. I just didn't know about it. So that's when I started doing my practice part time and just really focusing on people who were in my same situation, whether it was their spouse or their child, their parent, a friend, any sort of family member, just supporting those people and letting them know that they're not alone. They don't have to do this by themselves, and that it's not addiction is not just the person who's using the substance, it's a family disease, and that means that it affects everybody. So that's really just like the message that I focused on getting out there. And since 2015, I've had so many different clients that I've been able to help, and it's like bittersweet because I wasn't able to help myself. I wasn't able to help my husband, but the people that I help now, it's kind of like it's rewarding in a way to show people that they can come out on the other end and everything doesn't have to have such an unfortunate ending to it.
Sweet. Well, thank you. When Joe and I first talked to you, I did not know that side of the story. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you being kind of vulnerable there and sharing that with us. So that being said, I think we recently just passed a mental health month for maternal mental health, and then you were
Yes.
talking upcoming in June is men's mental health, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I can't thank you enough for being on here. And like I talked to you earlier, I had no clue this resource existed. I've been fortunate enough to not need that resource, but I have seen a lot of other dads reach out looking for that resource, and I'm that's kind of awesome that I'm just now finding out about it, because now I can offer some positive resource information for those people. But yeah, fire away. I think the dads will really like to hear, more about what goes on with this.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, like you were saying, for May was Maternal Mental Health Month, and as a mom myself, like I appreciate the importance of that. But talking with you guys, it made me question: is there a month for men too, for dads? And I just quickly Googled it, and I came across that June is for the dads, for the men. And I think that's great. I think guys, men deserve just as much help and support as women do, and it's harder for men in my experience to reach out and ask for help and to feel like it's okay to do that because it's not as normalized for the men. So that's kind of something that I hope to just bring awareness to tonight and just kind of put it out there that like you guys don't have to struggle just because you're a man, and like the whole stigma of real men don't cry, or the pride, like men don't ask for help, or you're crazy, you're weak if you have to go to therapy. And absolutely none of that is true. When you come to therapy, if you need to cry, give you some tissues. Like, it's fine. There is absolutely no shame at all whatsoever. And the best part of coming to therapy is whatever happens in that room stays in that room. Like, I have to keep everything confidential by law. I'd lose my license. So if you want to cry, nobody's going to know about it. If you want to share like your deep, dark secrets, nobody's going to know about it. You get a good therapist, it's totally safe. And I think a lot of people don't realize what therapy actually is because you see it in the movies, you see it on TV, you're not really there, you don't know the real experience. It's not scary, I promise. It's really you're not going to lay down on a couch and talk about your childhood experiences unless you want. But that's
I wouldn't mind getting a break and laying on a couch when you have kids. I think most dads might take that, but
I guess, right?
But so, Brandy, I have a question with that, right? So, like you mentioned, right, like the movies, right? And because really, I haven't gone to therapy. That really all you see, and that's what you assume, and you know. I guess what you kind of go and talk about this, and it's usually that, like, what, like, obviously you can't say what happens exactly, but you could preface like the whole set.
No, it's not like that. It's
Damn
it's
Hollywood.
Tell me how you feel, and every time I actually do say that to somebody, I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Like, it's not. It's honestly like I have different relationships and conversations with all of my clients. So there's some that it is more of me asking questions just because they don't know what to say or like they're not comfortable speaking on their own. So it is me sort of like pulling stuff. But I have other clients where it's just a conversation, it's a dialogue, it's back and forth, it's them hearing their own thoughts being spoken and making their own connections to things. And I sometimes sit there and I barely say anything. Mm-hmm. So everybody's experience is different based on what they're putting into it. So if you come in and you're like, verbal diarrhea and you don't shut up for 45 minutes, okay, that's you. That's what you need to do. You just need a safe place to vent. And that's totally fine. Therapy can be venting. That's it. That's fine. Or, there's other people who come in and they're like, I have so much going on, but I don't know where to start and I don't want to sound crazy and I don't want to overwhelm you. And to people like that, I just say, it's my job. You're not overwhelming me. You're not crazy. This isn't the first time I've heard something like this. You go at your own pace and you say what you need to say. And I'm here to help you. I listen. I want you to be comfortable. And that's it.
Do you find people opening like first session? Do they like, sometimes they hide stuff and then it's like they're very reserved, and then obviously as they get more comfortable, just like we all do in any conversation with people, but are they coming there like first session and it's like, all right, everything's out, this is
I've had plenty of first sessions where like the first session is the intake. So like I'm trying to get a background and get to know the person, and I have certain things that I'm hoping to have answers for. But yeah, there's plenty of people where I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh man, it's been 35 minutes and this person hasn't stopped talking and we didn't get off my first question. Okay, like, that's fine. I got a lot of information from you. I'll go with that. That's fine. We'll talk more next time. It's kind of just where the person is at that point in time. You know, like if they're going through a crisis and they just need to keep talking, I'm there to listen. I don't have an agenda per se. So, you know, if they get it all out, then great. We'll start from there next time. But yeah, there's also been plenty of people where months in, I find out something that I should have known in the first session. And then, you know, that's a whole thing of like, how come this didn't come up sooner? You know, what's going on that you felt like you didn't want to share this with me? Again, it's all based on the person. There's really no right or wrong way to do therapy. The only wrong way is if you have a bad therapist. And if you have a bad therapist, you got to find a different one.
Yeah.
I just thought of a question because we're talking about men kind of being reluctant to participate in this sort of thing. And I think when Joe and I initially talked to you, I think you said yes, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is this a service you can also offer remotely, almost like a teledoc service, so to speak?
Exactly.
Okay, I thought you had said yes, because I know that may be a huge barrier for some men out there that just they're more comfortable behind a screen or a camera than they are, you know, doing it in person.
And that's fair. You know, like you know, during the pandemic, it was all virtual mostly. And so since then, it did become more of a convenience thing for people. I have several clients who I speak with on their lunch hour, or you know, like just some like random time that they have during the day that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to be in therapy if it wasn't virtual. So yeah, I absolutely accommodate both. There's plenty of people who prefer in person, and then there's plenty of people who don't for whatever reason. And I don't ask you why you want to do it virtually. It doesn't matter. You know, if that's your preference because that's what makes you more comfortable, then there's no judgment there. That's like, it's totally fine.
Have you seen results change
from what?
From being in person or like virtual, like, you know, like kind of getting, I guess, more out of a person?
Yeah, like honestly, I prefer in person. I'm one of those people who, like, as soon as I was able to go back in person, I was there. It's a different experience for me. Where I sit, it's a whole different experience. You know, seeing the whole person, seeing their body language. I have so many clients that I've never met in person. I only see them on a screen, and it's weird for me. It's very. Like if I saw them in a store, I probably wouldn't even recognize them. I don't know how tall they are, how short they are. I don't know past here. So that to me is weird because it's such a close relationship that to only know somebody behind a screen, it's not the full person. But, you know, that being said, it doesn't mean that we can't do great work together because it's not in person. It is different. And a lot of the people that I saw during the pandemic virtually or started in person and then we went to virtual, came back in person. So it was just like that short amount of time that it was because of the pandemic, and then they came back. So it's either it's still
it's better than nothing either way. And I see it with what I do all the time too. I mean, Zoom has given us have clients in different states and things like that, which we didn't have, and more people that way. Nothing replaces, I think, you know, the in person. You know, if you can, but yeah, it still helps for sure. For sure. Okay. All right. Nick, we definitely had some questions. I don't know, Brittany, what were you just
I don't want to steal
there,
her thunder. So if she's got somewhere she wants to roll, she could do it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer your questions. I just had like one more point that I just wanted to put out there to everybody that this kind of came to me after we were talking the other day, that because mental health is so stigmatized and not prioritized, and I'm not just talking about men, I'm just kind of talking generally about everybody, it came to mind to me that like when you're going through a health issue, or even a family member is going through a health issue, get some kind of diagnosis, or, you know, needs surgery or an operation or whatever, it's our natural response to find the best care, the best treatment, the best doctor, the best surgeon, the best hospital, right? Like, no questions asked. This is just what we do right away, right? We need to get this person better. We need the best of everything for them, right? And it's just like, that's just what we do. We don't even think about it, but that's our physical health. When it's our mental health, it's not that way at all. And it's just like, oh, it's just a bad day, or it's just a bad week, and I don't have time for therapy, or, I don't need therapy. Like, it's not a big deal. And even then, when somebody does make the decision to go to therapy, so often I see people, and this is mostly because they don't know any differently, but people will just go on their insurance website and pick up the first person who's in their town, or the first name that pops up that does virtual, call them up and let me get started. And then they're in therapy. And because they don't know, this person may not be the best fit for them. And they don't realize that you don't have to stick with the first person you meet with. You're allowed to try out different therapists and find the one that you connect with, find the one who you can relate to or who makes you feel comfortable. And I've heard, unfortunately, horrible stories of therapists, virtual therapists, who will be looking off and watching a game, like a sports game, while doing a session and cheering for whatever just happened on the game. And the client is sitting there like, I thought we were in session right now. And for the person to think like, well, this is my therapist, I have to stick with them. But you don't. And treating your mental health just as you would physical health. Like, there are so many ways to find a therapist. It's not going through your insurance is honestly the last thing you should be doing.
I'll be honest.
Google-
when I go through my insurance, it is I would rather just Google them, because like I have Aetna, and it is a zoo trying to search for whatever specialty or whatever, and then you get a doctor and you find out that they don't even work for that particular. I mean, it's a nightmare. So I always pick up Google and then call my insurance next to see if who I found and who I like is available.
And it's more work, it's you have to either find a recommendation from somebody, which is hard to do too, because nobody admits that they're going to therapy. But, if you know somebody who is, just ask them, who do you go see? Who do you recommend? Even with Googling people, therapists in my area, there's 52 people who pop up. Again, don't just pick the first one because, you like the way they look or whatever. Read their profile, learn about them, ask for a consultation, call them and talk on the phone before you go in and commit to an appointment. And, myself as the therapist, it's not great to like meet with somebody for one session and they're like, yeah, I don't want to see you again. Like, it's kind of, oh, okay, I guess you don't,
you feel it.
but it is. And I would never want somebody to keep coming to see me when they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like I'm the best fit for them. I would rather them say, hey, it's just, I'm going to look for somebody else. Okay. Like, you do you, that's fine. So I think it's just important to remember that if you're going to take care of your physical health and for those around you, and that's something that is a priority and that's important to you, don't let your mental health or mental health of your family and friends be less important than the physical health. Like, you can't function as a person if you're not taking care of your mental health. So even if it's just acknowledging that you need therapy, like, so many clients have told me for months, for years, I knew I needed to go to therapy and I just didn't do it. And I'm so glad I did now. And it's years of stuff that they need to work through, but they just put it off. So, not that I want anybody to have a health issue or a heart attack or whatever it is, but we can all agree if that were to happen to any one of us, we're taking care of it right away, right? But feeling depressed or anxious, we're more likely to write that off. And it shouldn't be that way at all, because that's just, you're hurting yourself in a different way.
So how is it covered? Like, because I think that's a big thing. Like, like you just said, right? Like, we talked about insurance, but like when you have a heart attack, like, like, oh man, I might die tomorrow, so I got to go get this checked out type thing, or literally that day because you feel like you're dying. and there's no whatever it costs, which whatever it costs, right? But like I would have always thought, right, like going to a therapist would cost a ton of money because not thinking, maybe that it is covered by insurance, but yes, it's a specialty or it's not, some other stuff out of pocket.
Right.
Like how much does that kind of play into it? Because even let's say there is a man struggling and he's depressed, but he's depressed because it's finances, right? And now he's like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do, but it's going to put me in the hole even more. So they maybe don't reach out for that reason too.
Yeah.
How does that kind of come into play?
That's a very good point and very valid. And I've come across that unfortunately so many times, and that sucks because the mental health care system, it sucks. But lots of therapists, including myself, do take insurance. Everybody has certain ones that they take just because of how they pay us. But, whatever insurance you have, there's a website called Psychology Today, and you can go on there, you can search by the insurance that you have, and everybody in your area, everybody will pop up with their little biography, and you'll see who takes your insurance, and you will have a copay, which could range. Some people have like a $10 copay, some people have a $70 copay. So it's all based on your insurance, but therapy is absolutely covered by insurance. If you don't have mental health coverage, you do have the option to pay out of pocket, which, we're looking at anywhere from $100 to $250 for a session. But the insurance companies or the plans that maybe don't offer mental health care in network sometimes offer it out of network. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So you could come for a session and I might charge you $200, but once you meet your deductible, your insurance might reimburse you 75%. So it is an out-of-pocket expense, but if you have those benefits, you're going to be reimbursed for it.
Okay.
So, I get that. I get that it is costly to come every week, even if you have a $30 copay. It's $30 every week.
Mm-hmm.
It adds up.
Yeah, everything costs into that as well, so it's, but, listen, if it makes you feel better.
You can't put a price tag on good mental health.
No, you can't, and I guess with what you're doing, it's so, right, because even when I first reached out and, we've talked and I've known what you've done for years now, right, and I still thought it was still part of the addict, not so much the people that are impacted through it, which is so different, right? Because they're the ones that see it, right? And I'm sure there's tons of dads, and obviously some dads that probably listen here, and Nick and I know, in our group we see it on the Facebook groups and the dad groups, and all the time, people talking about it. Could be a brother, right, that they lost to it. It could be a family member. It could be their spouse. It could be, and they're reaching out to random people that they have no interaction with, but they just need somebody to talk to or just get something off their chest to some random people. And unfortunately, not everybody else on the group is a therapist and reacts and responds in the way which, if they knew that there was this resource, I think that could help so many dads and so many people in general. But, obviously we're, talking about dads, and you said it in the beginning, it's just, they're less likely to reach out, and one, because we have to feel a certain way and they feel like we have to act a certain way, but just not knowing, not knowing that there's that resource. And, so to anyone from Time to Dad, there is that resource if you're listening.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
But it's a huge thing. That's a huge thing.
And it absolutely is. And I think, like I was saying when I introduced myself, that I didn't know that there was help out there. I didn't know that there was other people going through the same thing as me. And I think if I had known that, it would have made everything so different for me, just like knowing that this isn't just you. This isn't your problem alone that you have to deal with quietly. There are so many people going through it. Like, you wouldn't even believe, like, if you're in a room with 15 people, I guarantee you at least four 4 or 5 of those people have somebody in their life who is going through addiction. You don't know it because nobody's talking about it. But if you wore a shirt that said, you know, my loved one is an addict, people are going to come over to you and say, yeah, mine too. And it's just like this quiet thing that everybody's ashamed to talk about. And that's what just makes the struggle so much harder, because everybody believes that they're the only ones going through it and that they have to go through it by themselves. And 100% that is not the truth. That's not how it is.
I'm going to rewind us for a second because you said something earlier that I thought was interesting. You had mentioned that some people almost wait too long to seek out your type of service.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact does it have to your work and the difficulty of it, of making an impact on someone and helping create that change based on the amount of time they wait to take action?
That's a great question. Yeah, very good question. I'm going to say it's never too late. You know, like when we were talking about physical health, like if you're having a heart attack today, don't wait 3 weeks to go to the doctor or the hospital, right? In mental health, it's easy to say, I'm not going to deal with this now, I'm going to deal with this now. But if it takes you 3 months or 3 years, I'm still going to talk to you. I'm not going to hear you say, you know, I wanted to come for 3 years and I'm sorry, it's too late for you. No, if you come when you come, you know, you need to be in that place where you're ready to do the work. So if it takes you 3 months or if it takes you 3 years, and that's when you feel like you're ready to address whatever's going on for you, so be it. But does it make it a little harder, a little more challenging? Yes, because now there's all of this stuff that happened already that you want to work on, but there's still stuff happening in the present day. So then it's like, do we start today, like with what's going on today, or do we rewind to 2.5 years ago when this issue started?
Right.
And that's kind of the conflict, just because, you know, that first session, they're filling me in on everything, but then next week they come in and there's this new issue, but we didn't really get to all the other stuff yet.
Yeah.
What's more important, really? So that could be a struggle, but I don't think that that's necessarily a barrier. That's not a reason not to seek therapy. It just, for me, you come to therapy ready to change. You come to therapy ready to talk. You come to therapy ready to face whatever it is about yourself that you need to face. And if you're not ready, I can tell if you're not ready. I can tell if you're only there because your wife told you to come, or because, you know, whatever the issue was. Somebody's giving you an ultimatum and telling you you have to do this or I'm leaving. It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different experience. If you're not ready for the full experience, keep waiting, because you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time. So for work to be done, you got to be ready to do the work.
It's kind of like almost like,
I'm not going to say it's easy. You know, that's
yeah, definitely.
Pulling yourself apart and admitting things, acknowledging things. It's hard. But to grow and to be a better person, to be a happier person, to be a healthier person, you got to start somewhere. And it's always ourselves.
It's almost like the same thing, right? Like you're saying, like, you know, if you don't want the help, you're not going to get helped, right? And then it's kind of like the same thing with the actual addict. If they don't admit that they're an addict, they're never going to overcome it too. It's almost like the same exact thing. It's just in a reverse.
100%.
Yeah. How old does somebody have to be able to come to therapy? Like, do they have to be 18, or can they come? You know,
you could be 6 kids. Yeah, kids. There is absolutely no age. I mean, like, every therapist works with different ages. So, like, personally, my youngest would be like a mature 14-year-old.
Okay.
But generally, I prefer like 16, 17, and older. But no, there's no minimum
That's
age.
got to be a big, right? Like, let's say, for example, a mother, father is the addict, right? How is that impacting the child, right? And then I'm just going to say, let's say the mother is the addict and the father doesn't want, maybe they can handle it, right? But they would rather have their kids get the therapy because they don't want to see their kids impacted because, right, they're so impressionable at 14, right? Their whole demeanor of life and age and who they are can change based off their surrounding and their environment still. So like that's like I find that kind of interesting. So, yeah. So they can come at whenever age?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There are people all the time seeking therapists for like 3-year-olds. And at that point, it's like, all right, that's a little young.
Yeah.
You do play therapy, but it's not like you're not doing therapy.
Yes. Yeah.
Once a child, like the example you just gave, if there's a 14-year-old or if there's a 7-year-old, like absolutely that 7-year-old should be in some sort of therapy because of course their home life is probably chaotic and that's going to affect them. Their schoolwork is going to change and their behaviors at home are going to change. So yeah, they belong in therapy too. Good question.
Yeah, they're coming. It's like I know we obviously the other day it's I feel like
we wrote up this list, and I'm like, man, I haven't asked a single one of these because I've got all these other questions I want to ask.
We might have to do the second episode one day because listen, it's important, and there's just so much out there, and that people do struggle with. I mean, if I went on our Facebook groups right now, Brandy, it's post after post after post of, and it's crazy. It really is. It's sad to see.
Yeah.
And and I think just what kind of goes out in the world. I think COVID had a big thing with it, right? I'm sure you've seen that. People getting locked in their houses and not, which was the person they needed to help with stuff, and then they fall back into bad habits and stuff like that. Or somebody liked to go in person, right? And you said then it was all Zoom, so who knows, how many people fell back in certain things, and that impact them, but impact more and more. And unfortunately, it's been 4 years, and we feel like nothing in the world kind of has gotten better since then. But I don't know, Nick. I know you had a few questions that we had kind of listed out. Did you get a few of those?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big ones I had was, it's kind of a two-part question, really, I guess. And the first part is, I'm let's say I'm the kind of stereotypical male where I'm bottling all this stuff up, right? And I'm keeping it to myself. I don't want to let friends know because I'm embarrassed by the situation. I don't want to let other family know, or, whatever the reason is that I'm deciding to kind of digest all this myself. What are some warning signs or things that an affected person should look out for that are really like, hey, you are at a serious tipping point yourself. Never mind what you're seeing and dealing with. Now I myself am in a critical situation. Are there certain, like, you know what I mean, where you're on that slippery slope and really putting yourself at risk at that point?
Yeah, and that's very important. Like those warning signs, like internal warning signs that we probably so often ignore or just like don't even realize what they are. So one of the biggest things that I always tell people is when you realize you're not yourself anymore, and whatever that might mean for you, like there's just something different about me. I don't feel myself anymore. I'm realizing that I don't play basketball anymore, or I don't sleep anymore through the night. I'm constantly waking up, or I'm angry with my kids. I'm angry with my dog. I don't laugh anymore, or literally anything. When you're just not you, you've lost a part of yourself somewhere along the line, and you're finally noticing it. That's it. Like that's the tipping point, because you don't want to lose all of you. If you can catch it where it's just like part of myself is missing, part of myself has changed. Let me get it back together. Let me see what I need to do. Let me go to therapy and find myself again, figure out what is going on and what I need to do to care for myself better. The other thing too is like just any signs of depression, or anxiety. So many people struggle with depression and anxiety. It is so common. And again, that's another thing that we tend to just write off. Like, oh, it's just a bad week. It's a bad day. It's a bad month. It's a bad year. It's a bad 4 years. And now you're so deep in this hole that depression is hard. It's a hard thing to pull yourself out of without help. So if you're, aside from losing those things about yourself, if you're feeling depressed, which signs of depression are just pretty much what you would think they are, again, from what you see on TV, or if you know somebody who's depressed, just like that lack of interest in doing things. But it doesn't always have to be so severe of, I can't get out of bed for 3 weeks. I'm not showing up at work anymore. People function with depression, but just not laughing, not having interest in things that you used to do all the time, or just kind of feeling like I need to get through the day, or just one more day and then it's the weekend, and then I can stay in bed all day, where you don't see your friends anymore. You don't see your family. Somebody's calling you and you just ignore the call because you just don't have it in you to talk. You can't see another person because you can't fake that smile anymore. That's when you know, like, all right, I need to be honest with myself and I need to do something about this before it gets worse.
Do you see it like an age demographic where those things start to kind of come in, right? Like we've all heard the midlife crisis, right? Like that's the start.
No, it's really like, I think with mental health and with addiction, it doesn't discriminate. And that's important to remember, because no, there's no age. Like the youngest, well, actually in previous jobs that I've had, I did work with kids, and terrible what these kids have to go through and the mental health issues that they have in elementary school. So no, there's absolutely no age where like it might start. It's just kind of circumstantial. It's genetics. It's anything. Somebody could have no mental health issues and then they're 65 and their spouse dies and now they're in a deep, deep depression. So it's whenever. Men, women, age, it does not matter at all.
Yeah. And,
Oh,
no, go ahead.
You got another one?
I got a billion more, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think so, right? I think so. I think a bit. Another question we see a lot is dads will post and they'll be like, I think XYZ is going on, or I think my wife is doing XYZ. And a lot of times that happens to be substance abuse related. And I know when Joe and I talked with you originally, you talked about some of that. But how, I guess, what would you say to someone who's thinking, I'm just going to go confront him and ask him about it?
I would say don't do that. Don't do. And the main reason being is because you're not prepared for what could be the outcome of that. If we're talking, so if it's somebody, a man whose wife, he suspects that she's drinking more heavily, that she's on the verge of like becoming an alcoholic, or she is an alcoholic, or whatever the case may be, and he wants to just on a Thursday night tell her, hey, you need to slow down with the drinking. Okay, well, let's consider you're going to approach somebody who may already be intoxicated. You're going to approach somebody who was probably trying to hide this, and now you're calling them out. And you're approaching somebody who is your wife and in sickness and health, right? And now you have kids too. Now your kids are in the house and now you're going to piss her off. And now, all the accusations are flying and you're getting kicked out of the house because how dare you accuse me of that? So going into something like that without support, without preparing for it, without even knowing for a fact that she is drinking, you're suspecting it. Maybe you have some proof, but if you don't know with 100%, no doubt in your mind, don't do it. It's out of concern, it's out of love, yeah, but unless it's like I your wife is about to get in the car and drive your kid somewhere, right? And then you know for a fact that she just had 3 glasses of wine. Of course you're going to intervene. You're going to say something that's danger for your kid right there, right? For her too. That's different. If we're talking about just confronting somebody for a behavior that you're suspecting, wait, get some help. Get yourself in therapy or talk to somebody you trust and just kind of air it out, like whatever you need to do to make sure that you're not just going into this impulsively and that you're gonna you either way, whether it's planned and thought out or not, you are risking that relationship, and that happens. That's kind of, I'm making a decision here because I'm so worried, I'm so concerned for you. I know that there's going to be pushback, I know you're going to hate me, but I'm willing to take that if it means you're going to get help for yourself.
Do you?
So that's where Hollywood's wrong again, right? Like we talked about the interventions, right? So that's right. We talked about that last time. So that's not what you want to do, but that's what Hollywood shows, right? And
it works great on TV, and 40 minutes everybody's hugging and going off to rehab. But
So do you see a significant portion of people that seek out your services before they've kind of put it on the table, that they're aware there's a problem?
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome.
And I agree. Like, I think that's, and I always tell people that, if whether it's a phone call or an email and someone's reaching out, my significant other, my daughter, my mother, my brother, has been doing this, that, and the other thing. I realize I need help for myself. I always commend them on that. I say, like, that's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah.
Because it is amazing and it is fantastic for somebody to recognize the importance of that and to say, like, I need to help myself before I can help them. Something I say a lot too is how, when you're on an airplane and they tell you, put your oxygen mask on first before you else. I never understood that. I always thought, like, why am I caring more about myself than, whoever's sitting next to me? But you have to, because just like this, I can't help you if I'm not ready to do that myself, right? So I'm going to put myself in therapy. I'm putting my oxygen mask on before I can help you put yours on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That makes total sense with that analogy thrown in there.
Yeah.
So what? Now I just lost my train of thought. So obviously helping someone prep for that next step, if they could catch it at that early point, that's something you do. What does that kind of, I don't know, coaching experience look like, or what tools or advice do you kind of arm someone with to help them tackle that?
It's I guess that's sort of, the answer for that is going to depend on everybody's situation.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's kind of like validating the person who's coming in to see me and, letting them know everything I said before about, like, you're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with this. You don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to feel like this is your fault. This is nothing you can't do. You can't fix this yourself. There's nothing you did to cause this. There's nothing you can do to control it, but you can take care of yourself. You can build kind of like the confidence in yourself to feel like, all right, like, this does not have to impact my entire life. This does not have to define me and who I am. And working more on that person as a person themselves, kind of separate from all of the addiction stuff, and getting to a point where they believe all of that, and then if they, depending who the person is, especially if it's a significant other and you have kids together and a life together, you can't ignore it. You can't just keep working on yourself for years and living this life, right?
Yeah.
So that's the goal, to figure out what's the plan here. Do you want to stay in this marriage or do you not? If you do want to stay, how do we get this better for you? And sometimes this rarely happens, but I always offer it that the person can come into a session.
I was
The
about to
person,
ask that. Yeah.
if you want to confront your wife, but you don't feel comfortable doing it at home, bring her in. We can talk together. And the reason why that rarely happens is because the person usually doesn't want to come in. I could work with a husband or a wife or a child or a mother, and they're all gung ho about it. And then when they say to the other person, hey, why don't you come to therapy? Why do I have to go to therapy? That's your business. Why are you making me go? I'm not going to see a therapist. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So
Is that
the
that's
hard.
that's interesting that you mentioned bringing them in, but that kind of made me think of another thing. So if the cat's not out of the bag, right, you haven't really expressed that you're noticing some goings on or have some things you're concerned about. um I guess too, are is that on like a level of trust you have with whatever family member it is that has the addiction, that you share that, hey, I'm going to therapy because I'm having, because you haven't confronted them, nothing's 100% out there. So what, obviously they're maybe taking some time away at night or whenever they're coming to see you. So how does that look?
That's, yeah, very good. That's tricky. And I'll be honest, like I have had, and I still currently do, several people who do not tell their significant others where they're going. So not even that they're going to therapy, but just like make something completely different
Yeah.
up. Cash paying clients, it's easier because you're not getting the EOBs from your insurance sent to your house, and your wife's not opening them up and seeing what is this? So I don't get too much into that because I want to respect their autonomy and everything. I'm not saying like you need to stop lying to your wife about this. It's a slippery slope. So there have been people I've worked with who it was out in the open in their marriage. And so one particular man did tell his wife that he was going because of her, but he used it in a way to like throw it in her face. Like, you're the one I'm going to therapy because of you. You did this. Now I have to spend 45 minutes every week going to therapy because of you. That's not
Yeah.
It's also not necessarily the right thing to tell somebody you're going out with the guys or you have a work meeting every Wednesday night for 45 minutes. Hope she never follows you somewhere. The right thing to do, would be being honest. And even if it's just saying like, I feel like I'm going through some things, and I just want somebody to talk to. And it's just, oh, why? What things? What are you going through? Life is hard, I'm just stressed. It's work, it's home, it's whatever. You don't have to be specific. I see this so many times where people choose to keep their therapy private from their spouse, and there is nothing wrong with that. If like, I'm meaning like they know that you're going, but don't know why. They don't know every week what you're talking about. That's your business. And if you don't want to share that with somebody, that doesn't mean that there's less trust or that you're talking about that person every week, whether you are or not. It's your private time, and you don't have to share it.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting thing, because it's like, right, like you kind of said it, like, oh, like what, why are you going, where are you going, as the spouse. But if it's, I guess, still a healthy marriage, right, and it's just they're working through some things, which is common, they would respect it, right, and hope. Obviously, it's always going to depend on the person, and that stuff. But it's tough too because they're going through some things too, which is why they're doing what they're doing, which is causing
Right.
the issue of why that
Right.
spouse is coming to you. So yeah, you could see that definitely. That's a tricky part. I give you credit on that. That's a tough position to kind of be put in. I mean, obviously, that's why your work is so rewarding when you're able to help people and
Right.
take them through that, and whether it's saving a marriage or saving a person and all those things. There's so much to it, and there's so many different things, but that's why mental health is so important. You know,
Exactly.
because there's just, and every person's different, and every reaction is different, and every spouse's reaction can be different. So you really, really got to get to know the person, but then they're people, right? Like you kind of have to learn about who's around them too to understand it.
Oh yeah.
Would you? Is there like a most common like person, like situation that comes to you, like this, my spouse does this, or my mom is like is there like oh yeah, like this is the most common thing that I see that people come and seek out?
I think post pandemic, I'm gonna say the most common thing is anxiety. It's people, being quarantined and realizing I have a lot of stuff I ignored for a lot of time, and I really can't stand my wife. Or like, I never realized like how short tempered I am, or I whatever. And definitely anxiety, the fear, all that stuff, where it just brought up a lot of stuff in people that they never paid attention to before because it wasn't so severe. So definitely that post pandemic. Also, I think a lot more people also post pandemic, just different coping skills, negative coping skills, a lot more drinking, a lot more smoking weed. Not necessarily that they're coming to therapy for that, but people do those things because they're self-medicating for something else. So there is underlying depression or underlying anxiety that they're masking by getting drunk all the time. Overall, is there like a more common thing? I don't think so. I think I see so many different types of people and so many different types of issues that it's just like a little of everything.
Yeah.
So I think one of the last questions I have, and I'm totally drawing a blank on what exactly I meant by this question, but it was what kinds of signs should someone look out for that they may not be aware of? And I think that was in regards to recognizing addiction.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe like if you're talking about a spouse, and you're like we were talking before about somebody, a wife who's drinking more and more. You think they're drinking more. Warning signs, kind of like we were talking about before within yourself, like noticing that you're not the same person anymore. Looking at your wife and realizing she's not the same person anymore. In a way that like now she's going out more, or now she used to come home at 5:15, now she's coming home at 5:45. Like what is she doing in that half hour? I had a client in the past whose wife would constantly stop at the liquor store on the way home, and it was that sort of situation where like where is she going, like why home? And he came to find out that's what it was, going to the liquor store. Change in behavior, whether it's that they're so much happier or that they're so much more depressed and withdrawn. Any major change in behavior and personality is a really good indicator. Not always that it's an addiction, that it's a substance use, but maybe even just a mental health issue, like maybe major depression going on there. But also, like I was saying, a lot of people cover up their depression with alcohol, with substances. So looking for those signals would just be somebody so easily angered by a small thing, somebody who used to just drink 1 or 2 beers at a barbecue, and now they're not putting it down, and like that's different. That's weird. I'm noticing that. People changing physically. Somebody who used to go to the gym all the time, now it looks like they're not anymore. Or that now all of a sudden they're going to the gym all the time. Like things could be signs of something else, but it could be signs of addiction. So that's also why you have to be so careful when you're confronting somebody. If you're choosing to confront somebody, you could be way off base. And now you just put this out there and you're totally wrong. There's also obvious signs, like if obviously with drinking, there's bottles. So if you're seeing the empty bottles, usually people will hide it. But like if you're stocked in a house and all of a sudden it's not the same anymore, you go to have a party, why is there less alcohol than there was last time? Substances though, or even with alcohol, less money in your bank account, more stops at the ATM. That's what it was with my first husband. It was constant withdrawals from the ATM in the same day because there was a limit. So he would hit like 3 or 4 ATMs on his way home from work, taking out $200. And there was always a reason, there was always, oh, it was for this, it was for that. How many things do we actually pay for in cash other than drugs? So things like that, like be aware if you're suspecting, be aware of your bank account. If you're really suspecting, check their car, check their pockets, like that's always a fine line too. You don't want to be, cross personal, but people do leave stuff around. And so many of my clients have found things in their spouse's cars or just around the house. Sometimes people become careless, and especially with kids, that's very dangerous. And you're going to find stuff around the house. You got to watch out for that.
So I think we're about to wrap up here. So I think for my last question I have, obviously, in addition to your business and how anyone that is needing this type of resource can get a hold of you, are there any additional resources or forms of support that you can recommend to people?
I actually would love to recommend the Nesting Place. They do a men's support group. I don't personally know anybody who's been to it. I've seen it advertised. The Nesting Place has locations in Yaphank and Farmingdale. I'm not sure. I think Massapequa. I think there's a third. But the Yaphank one and I think Farmingdale are the ones that do the men's group. And it's just a support group for men. And it's such a great resource because the Nesting Place was so focused on women and maternal stuff and all of this. And when I saw that they brought this out, I was just like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. I don't know that that's so focused on addiction. I'm going to say it's more just like men. I don't like what you guys are doing, but just in the form of a support group.
Yeah.
Do you know if they do virtual, Brandy? Because like that's all New York, Long Island, and
yeah, I'm not sure if they do virtual, but I'm gonna say it's in person. I could be wrong.
I'm sure other places, I'm sure states have similar things that, right?
I've heard like drips and drabs of all different people doing more like informal support groups for men. This is just the only one that I know that's like professionally led. But as far as addiction, there is, AA for the person who's actually using, but there's also Al-Anon for the family members. And that's easy enough to find. You just Google it, and there are virtual meetings for that. They're everywhere. So wherever you're coming from, there's Al-Anon meetings, and that's really the best place to go for support with people, not therapeutically, but with people who truly get what you're going through.
Cool. And where people can reach you again through your website?
Yep. So my website is serendipitytherapyservices.com, and all of my contact information is right on there.
Sweet. Well, again, thank you so much. Oh, you got one more?
One thing. Yeah. If there was like one thing, Brandy, right? Like that dads are listening, right? There's some dads that have one kid. There's dads that are 21 years old. There's dads that are 50, 60 years old on here, right? Like if there's one thing and they're struggling with anything like this, right? Like what's like one thing that you could give them to, obviously to do would be to reach out, right? But like that you would just encourage them with, or give them something to take home with. Like if they're listening to an episode like this and then they're sitting there like, hey, I've been dealing with this stuff, right? The last 4 years have been tough, but it hasn't been that tough, right? Like, and they're like, what's one thing that you would recommend?
I love that. Great.
That was a deep question. I like it.
I'm going to say, don't let it get to the point like where it is too much. Like if you feel like, all right, I'm in a hard place right now. Things are a little hard, but I got this. I can handle this. I'm going to push through. You don't have to push through. You don't have to be a man. You don't have to suck it up. Sucking it up is what's going to give you trouble later on. So don't listen to what anybody else is saying. Listen to yourself. And when you hear yourself crying out for help, do something about it. Get yourself help and do whatever it's going to take to make you feel okay with wherever you are in life, to make it feel easier to get through the day and to look forward to tomorrow. And whatever stigma is out there, whatever your family members think, whatever your friends think, they're not the ones living in your body. So this is about you. This is for you. And really, again, like I said earlier about your physical health, if you wouldn't ignore a heart attack, don't ignore what's happening in your head.
Awesome. I love it.
Wait. Well, again, many thanks to you for joining us. We really appreciate it. This is the first kind of style of this episode we've done, and I'm super excited to get this out there and let people know about it. And again, we would love to have you back on, because I'm sure we didn't even cover half of what you do and how you can help people. But super amazing resource. Thank you guys for listening along with us. I will put all the links to everything Brandy has mentioned, including her business, and those additional resources for where you guys can reach out. And as always, in the dad group, feel free to ping us with any questions, reach out for any kind of support we can help you with. And again, just super stoked that we can get you guys a legitimate resource other than us just jibber jabbering back and forth. So it's been a privilege to hear from you, and we appreciate what you do and what you shared with us. So
it was great, and I would definitely be happy to be back. So anytime.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode.